Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaykumus salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Nice to see you again, old friend. Yes.
Been a long time.
Alhamdulillah.
Hi.
Alhamdulillah. Wow, it's hard to believe that we're on the 18th evening already in this blessed
Yeah,
month.
yeah, it is a blessed month. You know, I wasn't going to mention this, but as we begin so joyfully and all, I just have seen the news alerts that the
Yeah.
ceasefire is broken down. So we
Yeah,
pray
it's
for people.
not that the ceasefire broke down. It's that heavy bombardment has been reinitiated, and
Yeah.
so many things, of course, will break. But so these are days of great sadness and great suffering, and we can only hope and pray that that the little things that we do will, in some small way, either through entanglement theory or in some way, shape, or form, that what we do has a medicinal, healing, restraining, moderating, calming effect upon these these fires that just continue to rage, and the suffering that we willingly and knowingly inflict upon one another, that these terrible forces just rage on. And it reminds me of the first night when we started and we were reading Surah Al-Baqarah, and the angels had given the foreknowledge of that we humans would do terrible things, and we would shed blood and corruption, and that we would do terrible things. And yet God had a plan, and God just said to them, I know something that you don't. And so the mystery of that statement and the mystery of God's optimism in creating humankind is something that we have to seek and believe in, even when we see firsthand, we see the horrors of the angels' foreknowledge playing out in front of our eyes. So may God shield the innocent. May God restrain those who would inflict unnecessary injury upon others. And may we live to see a happier day, a more peaceful day, a more humane day, a more civilized day, when we can see this spirit, this divine spirit in one another, and instead of dehumanizing one another and continuing to inflict this barbaric violence upon each other.
Ameen. That's a beautiful term, the mystery of God's optimism.
Yeah, I mean, I still wonder. Like, I would like I could write a whole dissertation just on that. Spend the next 10 years just researching how the interpreters of the Quran interpret that one sentence when God tells the angels, "I know what you don't know." And somehow, when I read that in Surah Al-Baqarah, and I know we're not there tonight, we're in the 18th portion, but when I read that, I see God's optimism somehow, that God is telling the angels that it's not going to be, that there's something so wondrous and magnificent here that will outshine the violence and the bloodshedding and the barbarism that you see. The mission and vision of the American Islamic College, to me, pretty much now synonymous with the work. I believe in the transformative power of education, and not just education that is informative, but in education that is transformative, education that really changes how we live. But I think that the Muslims of America need a place that they can come as a Muslim space. This is their space. It belongs to them.
All right. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Let's, since you were on the story from Al-Baqarah, right at the end of Taha, which is still from last time, but hopefully we'll slowly begin to catch up. And by the way, it's 30,
Surah 20.
Surah 20, Taha. Yeah. Those mysterious broken letters from the beginning, Taha, which is an allusion to the Prophet by the rendering of most interpreters. So hopefully we'll get through some of this today and then begin to catch up. But we are actually in bigger trouble than we thought, because we've got the 30 parts, but I think there are 29. This is a 29 month, so we'll be one night short. So we've got another part to catch up on at some point. But at the end of Taha, it's this Adam and Iblis story again.
Again, yes.
And it ends with, but his Lord chose him for his grace. He turned to him and gave him guidance. This is God to Adam. And he said, get ye down, both of you, all together from the garden, with enmity to one another. But if, as is sure, there comes to you guidance from me, whosoever follows my guidance will not lose his way nor fall into misery. And then this next, it's one of those places there's a distinctive turn to the narrative. But whosoever turns away from my message, verily for him is a life narrowed down. And the other translation is a life of great hardship. Ma'ishatan danka, banka. Like a constrained ma'isha, life.
Life, yeah.
And we shall raise him up blind on the day of judgment. So, like you pointed out, we go from the prehistory, the primordial existence in the garden, to post history, the end time, the last day. And then this person will say, oh my Lord, why hast thou raised me up blind while I had sight before? And God will say, that is how it is. When our signs came unto thee, thou disregard them. Didst thou disregard them? Thus didst thou, when our signs came unto thee, disregard them. So wilt thou this day be disregarded? So wilt thou this day be disregarded? It's
interesting that I guess in a way the metaphorical implication of this is that by turning to the revelation, we have sight. So it's almost like turning to the revelation, we have light that allows us to see. And when human beings turn away from God's revelation, there is no light by which to see. And so even if we have our physical faculty of sight, it's as if we're not seeing. Because it is that you turned away, right, from our signs, and now in a way we're turning away from you. And so the blindness, I mean, it could be a literal blindness, but there's also this sense that in order to see, in order to truly have sight and vision, that the only way that we can have that true vision is through the light of revelation. And when we turn away from the light of revelation, we still may see things, but we won't see them clearly or for what they truly are. And so it's...
And as you speak of it in these terms, this is a sequence of Meccan surahs. And the early Meccan surah especially tend to be more apocalyptic,
Yeah.
fast-paced, end times. And here we have this metaphor of light and the person being raised blind, and you're needing two things in order to see. One is light, that illuminates the world, but also then a capacity to be able to see. And this sequence of Meccan surahs will end, if we get to it today, with Surah An-Nur, which is one Medinan surah. And then we come back to the Meccan surahs. And that surah is called Light, the surah of light. And it
Yeah.
has the famous light verse that God is the light of the heavens and the earth. So we're kind of heading in that direction. And it's
Yeah.
illuminating, if I can use that term, to read.
Yeah, no, it's not only is it illuminating, but it kind of opens up. I feel like it opens up neural receptors in the brain. Sometimes when we read certain texts, it just seems to open up the mind and create the opportunity for new connections and new understandings. There's one jewel in Surat Taha among the many jewels that I would love for you to read your translation, or the translation you have there of. It's Moses's dua in Taha, and it starts with when God tells him to go to Pharaoh, and Moses, of course, feels an imposter syndrome. He feels that he's totally unqualified, and we have this beautiful supplication from Moses that goes from ayah 25 until, let's see, until in ayah 36, when God just says, your prayer is granted, Moses, I give it to you. But can you just read that, and then we can leave? I'll be in peace leaving Surah Taha behind.
Okay. Hang on, I actually went to the wrong surah.
This is ayah 25 in Surah Taha.
Yeah, I think I know the verses you're talking about. Qala Rabbi shrah li sadri.
Yes.
Let me get to it. This is actually when Dr. Israr, who I've mentioned many times as one of my teachers, an important teacher for Qur'an.
May God be merciful to him.
I mean, he would when he would begin a dars of the Quran, like a lesson, his dua would be Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli.
Yes.
This one, which is so God says, I'm going to start with verse 24.
Okay.
I'm going to read Abdullah Yusuf Ali. Should I do that one?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, it's nice.
What I've been doing since we started this evening, although I typically do study Quran or Abdul Halim for ease of reading, but there's a poetic vibe to Abdullah Yusuf Ali that somehow is unique. So God says to Moses, go thou to Pharaoh, for he has indeed transgressed all bounds. Moses said, O my Lord, expand me my breast, ease my task for me, and remove the impediment from my speech. The other translation has, untie my tongue.
Yes.
So they may understand what I say, so that they may understand my words, and give me a minister from my family, or a helper, Wazira, Aaron, my brother. Add to my strength through him, and make him share my task, that we may celebrate thy praise without stint, and remember thee without stint. For thou art he that ever regardeth us. Allah said, granted is thy prayer, O Moses. Yeah, it's a beautiful prayer. It's brief phrases. If you hear the Arabic, it's a rhyming kind of theme. Sadri, Amri, Lisani, Qawli, Ahli, Akhi, Azri, Amri. And then it goes, after, make him share in my task, Aaron. And then the rhyme scheme switches. That we may celebrate thy praise without kathira. And then Musa goes back to the other rhyme, O Moses. So it's a lovely section.
Yeah, it really is.
Which is, we talked about imposter syndrome. And I mean, this is This is a prophet of God, and he's worried about how he's going to come across,
Right.
though he's being sent with God's command and his revelation. It's quite remarkable. Uh, so
Yeah. And this is one of the very few places where we know in the Hebrew Bible, um, the Hebrew Bible's depiction of Moses is that he did have a speech impediment, right?
yeah,
And so this is one of the rare references to that in the Qur'an. But it's, he's not only is he a prophet of God, but he's going to speak unwelcome words to the most powerful ruler, in his world. And so, it's just very powerful in his, in the way it's so poetically requested, all of this. So that to me was one of the great jewels in the heart of this surah. And
well, if we go to Al-Anbiya, the next
okay.
surah, it's got an amazing beginning. So
The surah
very
of the
different.
prophets.
Yeah, Al-Anbiya, this is surah number 21, chapter 21. And Al-Anbiya is the plural of Nabi, which is prophet. And so the plural would be prophets. And it begins, very direct. Iqtaraba linnas, like Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. Iqtaraba linnasi hisabuhum wa hum fi ghaflatin mu'ridun. Closer and closer to mankind comes their reckoning, yet they heed not and they turn away. Never comes aught to them of a renewed message from their Lord, but they listen to it as in jest, playfully. Yal'abun. And I think at the end of this surah, we will have, is it at the end of this surah? Or maybe, no, it's the end of Mu'minun, right before we come to Nur. Like, do you think we created you abathan, purposeless?
Yeah.
So that, you think there's no purpose and you receive this in jest. With frivolous hearts, their hearts toying with trifles, the wrongdoers conceal their private counsel, saying, is this one more than a man like yourselves, like the prophet? Will you go to witchcraft with your eyes open? Or the other translation is easier to understand. Are you going to fall under his spell with your eyes wide open? Like he's bewitching you. And so this is similar to how some of the other surahs begin, where they say you're mad to the prophet's opponents, that you're possessed, you're demon possessed, majnoon, you're out of your mind. And so this is how the prophet's message is then being received.
And the kind of the author's perspective, that is God's perspective, right? We even see glimpses into their private counsels, right? So we have this authorship, which sometimes is in the first person, sometimes in the third person, but we have this like vision of even their private counsels, where they're like whispering to each other, right?
Yeah.
Like, are you going to fall under his spell?
His spell, right. They're reinforcing each other. And this was also in Al-Baqarah. We didn't read this part, but earlier on, like when they retreat to amongst their own little in-group,
right?
They say, are you going to believe like these foolish people believe? But then when they're with you, they say, oh, we believe.
Yeah.
So, so there's this double speak happening. And then I'm just going to hop, if you don't mind. There's a few nuggets, but stop me. And
no, it's good.
Okay, so verse 16 to 18, it kind of continues this theme. Not for idle sport did we create the heavens and the earth and all that is between. So that theme of you're playing with revelation, you receive it playfully as a trifle, but this is serious. And so, not for idle sport, laibin, did we create the heavens and the earth and all that is in between. It has purpose. If it had been our wish to take just a pastime, it's interesting. Like if God just wanted to amuse himself, right?
Mm,
لو أردنا أن نتخذ لهوا, if
mm,
we just wanted to kind of entertain ourselves, we should surely have taken it from the things nearest to us,
mm.
if we would do such a thing. And this is an indication to me, like, we are really far in one sense from God,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Mm,
what does this mean, nearest to us? I didn't
mm.
look at the study of Quran here, but I can quickly glance at it.
Yeah, and it's actually it's min ladunna. So it's we would have taken those things or that thing from our own presence, right?
Yeah, from our own
You know,
presence.
and we see this, like, even the the knowledge that God had given to the spirit guide, the one, the teacher of Musa, in our previous reading. That knowledge
Mm,
was given to him min ladunna, from
that's
God's
right.
own presence. So the idea was that, had God wanted to to entertain God's self, if we can use that kind of inappropriate kind of, even, it's kind of silly to even say that, but that God would have, God is sufficient unto God, that God could have done that from God's own presence.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. And here's the. Should I quickly read the gloss here in this
Yeah.
study Quran? It's a very brief one, but it's super interesting. It says diversion, in take up diversion. So they translate this verse as, had we desired to take up a diversion,
Mm,
we would surely have taken it from that which was with us, were we to do so. And so the gloss is, diversion in take up a diversion is interpreted by some to mean consort or wife. This is Qurtubi and Tabari. Or
ah,
to have a child. From that which was with us means that if God had willed to do so, he would have not have created the world at all, referring back to
mm,
the previous verse, which states that God did not create the world in play. Another possible interpretation is that this verse signifies that God is transcendent beyond the kinds of commingling with his creation that is falsely attributed to him by some.
mm.
So, if that helps, it's
Yeah, no, it's a really interesting line. Yeah, but that's, I mean, that's the idea, isn't it? Is that the creation is so far below the creator that why would God even want to bother with the creation if God was only interested in uh, a diversion or entertainment or distraction.
yeah.
But
And
the
then
next but
the
the next
final,
surah
yeah,
but the next
yeah,
surah
the
is
next,
really jarring. Go ahead.
yeah, the next ayah. Go ahead. I've been reading. The next
No, no,
ayah is
I
incredible.
have the same Yusuf Ali translation. Go ahead. I like it when you read. It's nice.
Nay, we hurl the truth against falsehood,
Mm,
and it knocks out its brain.
yeah.
And behold, falsehood doth perish. Ah, woe be to you for the false things ye ascribe to us.
Mm,
It's a powerful, powerful
yeah.
kalam.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
when you look at this world, it's like falsehood triumphs. Someone just said to me today, as we were pondering the events that are taking place, that it's as if God is on the side of tyranny. This is what they said to me.
Mm.
And I was just taken aback and thinking about it. And this is, the Quran talks about this, that even to the Prophet, it's like, don't let the 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 apparent successes of the forces of tyranny, I'm paraphrasing,
Yeah.
deceive you that they somehow are privileged by God. That this is a very limited kind of domain in which they're being given some leave, and the reality is far, far greater. Uh,
Yeah. But again, the only way to even begin to grasp that is to I guess, be coached to see through it and beyond it to something greater, because when
True.
we look at it for for itself, it's so overwhelming and so devastating and so depressing and so um, so captivating in a way, and it's almost like in the in when we read Surah Al-Falaq later on, the Lord, the light of the Lord who cleaves the darkness, when it commands, from the night, when it stretches over, that dark night that completely overshadows you. I feel like sometimes the events of the world just overshadow us, and the revelation almost comes as a kind of knife that cuts through the thickness of that cloud and the thickness of the darkness, and allows us to see something beyond it. And maybe that's that's the way we get deceived in the world, is we become too not enamored, but we become too transfixed on the literal events that are happening around us, and we forget that even Joseph, his gift was the interpretation of those events, that those events only are really symbolic, and that there's some other greater story that's being played out in the midst of these dramas that we live and that we experience. And this particular verse that you read, that when the truth hits the falsehood, it just knocks out it's very physical. It knocks out its brain. So there's this sense that the truth becomes like a wrecking ball in this world of illusion, in a way. And
yeah. Nice. A couple of things are coming up here that we haven't touched upon before. The scientific, so-called scientific miracles of the Qur'an. And we'll see and then this impacted some people profoundly, like Maurice Bucaille, who looked at the development of the embryo in the womb and read the Qur'an. It's like the sequences. Nobody could have known this until modern embryology. And we'll read that in Surahs Al-Mu'minun and Al-Hajj if we pause at those verses. But here in verse 30 of Al-Anbiya, it's the cosmos. And so this verse 30, it's been taken to refer to what we today understand as the Big Bang. And just for those who are scientifically minded people, I'm very mindful of the critiques of reading contemporary science into Revelation, because the danger of that is the science. There's two dangers. One is the science keeps changing. So what you today say corresponds to science. Tomorrow, the science will be different. And yesterday was already different and understood differently. And so we have to recognize the contingency in human knowledge. But at least from our current vantage point, what some people have read into this verse number 30 is, do not the unbelievers, this is verse 30 of chapter 21.
And again, can we replace unbelievers with a more appropriate word, you think?
Both of them say unbelievers and disbelievers.
I don't like it. Yeah, it's
Kafir. You want to say ungrateful?
Or the deniers, maybe, right?
Have those who
kafara can mean to deny.
Let's study Quran. Have those who disbelieve. But I think you need to write.
Yeah, no, it doesn't resonate with me, because it's not about belief so much as it is about active opposition and kind of willful misrepresentation, and all of that is part of the.
I hear you. And in Surah Luqman, we're going to come to that. I believe it's Surah 31. The kufr, the word that's being translated for disbelief, is actually juxtaposed and contrasted with shukr, gratitude. Yes. And so a kafir, from that point of view, is not an unbeliever, but an ingrate.
Yes, an ingrate, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So your point's well taken. Let's read ingrate.
Yeah, let's do not the ingrates. Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Do not the ingrates. Do not those who are ungrateful to their Lord, right? Or who are ungrateful. they do not the ingrates see that the heavens and the earth were joined together as if one unit of creation
Mm,
before we clove them asunder.
mm.
We made from water every living thing. وَجَعَلْنَا مِنَ الْمَاءِ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ حَيٍّ.
Yeah.
Will they not then believe?
Will they not
It's
then believe?
right. And so our contemporary scientific knowledge can almost, read this and say, but of course,
Right.
this is a miracle of divine revelation.
But it's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing. Everything is made from water, and we
Yeah.
know that the planets, the Goldilocks in the Goldilocks zones, the Earth-like planets for which we're searching throughout the galaxy, are those that have the capacity for liquid water.
And water is the
Right.
Holy Grail. Yeah.
Exactly. For life
So
in the universe.
for life. So that so far as we know.
Yeah.
And so this is just a nice verse to point out.
Yeah.
There's a verse number. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that this is part of what scholars call the inimitability of the Quran, the ijaz of the Quran. That not only is it the style of the Quran which cannot be imitated, but it's also the contents of the Quran, and some of which the more scientifically minded scholars say some of those meanings that we can't even unlock or appreciate until we've evolved to a certain level scientifically of scientific literacy, and only then will certain verses really leap out and speak to us in this way. But these are both incredible references. Go ahead, Sidi.
Well, the other interesting, just on human nature, a different aspect of it, verse 37, man is a creature of haste. And this is being told to us in light of the prophet is saying, well, the punishment is coming, right? And be prepared. And the people are saying, oh, come on, bring it if you're truthful, right? And we're always kind of like in a hurry. And in the grand scheme of things, I mean, right now we know, if you look at big history, I'm thinking of another surah that comes later on. I'll read the Arabic because it's just, I love the way the Arabic sounds. And then هل أتى على الإنسان حين من الدهر لم يكن شيئا مذكورا. Like, has there not come on humankind, a time when he was a thing not to be mentioned? And if you look in the scale of big history, like, we've been around for less than a blip. Like, if you put the history of the Earth on a 24-hour clock, human beings have been there for less than 2 seconds. And so, what are you, just chill out, things will come, the promise will be fulfilled, and don't hasten it. But we are creatures of haste. And this is why patience is so important. Anyways, that's man is a creature of haste. Soon enough, I will show you my signs. Then he will not ask me to hasten them. Like, you should be thankful that the judgment hasn't come, especially if you're kind of in this situation of ingratitude. So take this time as a blessing and see if you can reflect and come to a different place.
Yeah.
Well, there's the story of Ibrahim. Speaking of creature of haste, I'm looking at the clock and I'm moving forward.
Okay. Oh,
I know you love.
yes. No. There's a fatigue that sometimes, and so we're not creatures of haste tonight. But yeah, it's interesting. The people often will pause and ask, right? So why would we hear the story of Iblis so many times in the Quran? Why would we hear the story of Abraham told slightly differently in each context? Why would we hear the stories of Jesus and his mother Maryam? Why would we hear those stories? Why would they be coming back again and again? And Noah and all of the messengers. It's a really interesting feature within the Quran, because the Quran again is not except for the story of Joseph, right? It's not telling us the whole sustained story. It's more like it's in the middle of a of a spiritual teaching, and then it just kind of zooms in and it highlights the story, or the story of Abraham.
Mm.
And so here we are again with Abraham. And one thing that I noticed that I'd never noticed before, Mahan, in Surah Maryam, in the Surah of Mary, both John and Jesus are praised for their piety toward their parents, the reverence that they have for their parents. And Ibrahim, upon him be peace, he's the child in Surah Maryam who's like disputing with his father. And so there's a sense there where he's not being insolent and disrespectful, but he's kind of engaging in that rational disputation that we come to associate with Abraham in the Qur'an, because he's always asking those uncomfortable questions from his parents and from his people. And I noticed that's he's unique in Surah Maryam as one of the messengers who actually is kind of in a respectful way opposing his parents in Surah Maryam.
Yeah, and actually, in this surah here, the prophets, it's out in the open, his opposition. And so the story begins in verse 51. Yeah. We bestowed aforetime on Abraham his rectitude of conduct, and well were we acquainted with him. Behold, he said to his father and his people, what are these images to which you are so assiduously devoted? They're exactly what you just said. And they said, we found our fathers worshiping them. And this is profound in that, the Qur'an is centering a critique of received tradition, uncritically received tradition. And here we tell our children to just follow, because this is how we do things. And the Qur'an here is telling the children, don't just listen to your parents like that. And Abraham is the example. It's very interesting. And so we found our fathers worshiping them. Should I just read the story? Because it's a story.
Because and it's also an interesting reflection of exactly what the pre-Islamic Arabs said to Muhammad when he was proposing that they give up all these idols and these traditions, and they said the exact same thing to him.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Is what our fathers were for. So Abraham said, indeed, you have been in manifest error. So when they said, this is what our fathers were worshiping, it says, you've been in manifest error, ye and your fathers. They said, have you brought us the truth? Are you one of those who jest? Or are you one of those who jest? He said, nay, your Lord is the Lord of the heavens and the earth, who created them from nothing. And I'm a witness to this truth. And by Allah, I have a plan for your idols after you go away and turn your backs. So now he's thinking to himself, right? He didn't say that in the open. So he broke them into pieces, right? Then the exegetical tradition will tell us that they went out to a festival and Abraham remained back, and he broke the idols, all but the biggest of them, and he left the biggest one intact. So it's just a remarkable portrayal of his engagement, I suppose. And he did that they might turn and address themselves to it. So they said, who has done this to our gods after they came back? He must indeed be some man of impiety. And then others, people, they're conversing, and they said, we heard a youth talk of them. He's called Abraham. They said, bring him before the eyes of the people that they may bear witness. They said, when they brought Abraham, art thou the one that did this with our gods, O Abraham? He said, no, it wasn't me. This was done by the biggest one of them. Look, he's still there. Ask him. Ask them if they can speak intelligently. And now this is the interesting part, right? So Abraham, maybe this is truth comes and falsehood knocks out falsehood's brain, because the Arabics, فَرَجَعُوا إِلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ.
Yeah. They started looking at themselves.
They looked inward. They're like, man, he's got a point. Right? Surely, you are the ones in the wrong, like to each other. Like
Yeah.
he's got us. But then ثُمَّ نُكِسُوا عَلَى رُؤُوسِهِمْ.
Yeah.
Then they were then they were confounded with shame. That's one translation. The other translation says, but then they lapsed again and said. But literally it means they turned back on their ala ru'usihim. So from the anfusihim, deep down, to the ru'usihim.
Oh,
Their
interesting.
their pragmatic, worldly calculations, their interests, their
Like their
position in society.
rationalization.
Yeah, they started to rationalize
Yeah.
as opposed to kind of an inward realization. And
Right.
they said, you know very well these gods can't speak. And Abraham said, do you then worship them besides Allah? Things that can neither be of any good to you nor do you harm. Uffil lakum, fire upon you and upon the things that you worship besides Allah. Have you no sense? They said, burn him.
Yes. And
Because,
protect your gods.
protect your gods, because
Yes.
there's no more talking to be done here. It's basically power. They have the
Yeah.
power. And then God says, which is the beautiful, قُلْنَا يَا نَارُ كُونِي بَرْدًا وَسَلَامًا عَلَى إِبْرَاهِيمَ. So they threw him into the fire, and we said, "O fire, be thou cool," and a means of safety for Abraham.
So this is biblically, right, when Abraham is put in the furnace and the furnace is cool. And so here, this is that Abraham is put in the fire, but the fire doesn't burn him.
It doesn't burn him. And I heard a Sufi rendering of this, if I may quickly. I always loved it. Is when Abraham was being hurled to the fire, God sent an angel to help him. And so the angel comes down and he's kind of hurling, and time slows down. And the angel says, Assalamu alaikum. And Abraham is like, Wa alaikum assalam. And he says, I've come to you from your Lord, and is there anything I can do? And he says, Hasbi min su'al ilmuhu anil hal. Like, good enough for me as a supplication is God's knowledge of my state. Like, what can you do for me? God knows
Right.
my condition already, and he will do what he wills. And so we said to the fire, be cool, and a source of security for Abraham. So it didn't harm him. So lovely story.
And it's illustrative of a truth that we see again and again in the Qur'an. And strangely, I'm reminded of a line in this great song called "Jah Live" by Bob Marley, and it opens with, "The truth is an offense, but not a sin." And I think with the prophets, we see that play again and again and again, that there's something offensive about truth, not because it's spoken offensively, but because it challenges people's customs and people's habits and people's even their power structures, challenges it to the very core. And we see Abraham doing this to such an extent that they want to kill him in fire. They want to burn him. And it just shows you how offensive it is when someone so fearlessly, even calmly, but someone so fearlessly challenges the assumptions of the mob and the leadership of that mob. Wow.
Well, the story immediately goes to, but we delivered him and his nephew Lot, like Lut. And then it goes to Isaac and Jacob, and it speaks of them as leaders. And then it speaks back again of Lot as someone who's given hukman wa ilman, a good, sound judgment and knowledge. Then it goes to Noah and David and Solomon, who had, control of the forces of nature and the birds and the winds and the jinns. And then Job and the hardship he bore and the patience with which he bore it. And Ishmael, and Zulkifl, and Idris, and Zunnun, Jonah, the whale, Zechariah, John, And it climaxes. This all comes very quickly with Mary.
Yeah.
She's mentioned in the line of prophets. وَالَّتِي أَحْسَنَتْ فَرْجَهَا. And so it doesn't even mention her by name. And remember the one who guarded her chastity, like as an allusion. We breathed into her of our spirit, and we made her and her son a sign for all peoples. Verily, this community of yours is one single community.
Yeah.
Inna hadhi ummatukum ummatan wahidatan wa ana rabbukum fa'budun. And I am your Lord, so serve me.
Yeah.
وَتَقَطَّعُوا أَمْرَهُمْ بَيْنَهُم. But they have torn their unity apart. But later generations cut off their affair of unity one from another. This is almost, to me, it sounds very perennialist, if I can use that term. If I can use that term, that
Why
almost,
don't you explain what that term
well,
signifies?
I use it cautiously. The idea that all of these traditions are still as true, and they, if you adopt any one of them fully, that you will climb the mountain perhaps from a different side, but reach the same summit from any direction. And deep down, they're harboring the similar truths. But I feel that the Quran can be read this way, that you're not going to be able to resolve these differences, but somehow can you contain them all together, or at least live with the differences that you find amongst yourselves, and focus instead on the good works. فَاسْتَبِقُوا الْخَيْرَاتِ. And if you want to compete in virtue,
Doing
and
good
let
things.
these theological differences will be decided by God. Wallahu a'lam.
And I'm still so moved by our discussion last evening with Ustada Tahira, and and this ayah 91 is just again so powerful, because the Quranic Christology is so deep and so still so mysterious, even though we understand clearly that Jesus is one of the messengers, Quranically speaking, so that Jesus is still part of the creation and not part of the creator in that way, but it's still so profoundly mysterious and beautiful when we read again, like, and remember the one who guarded her chastity and how we breathed into her of our spirit. That's Jesus, right?
Right.
And
Yep.
made her and her son an ayah, a sign. And every verse of the Quran is an ayah. And everything in nature that points to God is an ayah, a sign for all the worlds, not even for all peoples, but for all the worlds. And it's again, I just we could have spent all 30 nights of Ramadan just on this one topic, but it's something which comes back to us again and reminds us of the profundity of the conversation we had last night when we were talking about Surat Maryam.
No, it's
wow. And I love this idea that you pointed out here, this Quranic idea that after we've gone through this sort of this litany of all the prophets, in brief, it's all sped up here, but that this is just a single ummah, a single community. And if the prophets are a single community, then those of us who follow them, doesn't matter which one we follow, should therefore live as a single community. It makes sense. But we're far from that these days.
Yeah, I feel there's somewhat of a reckoning there. Yeah, see, we are in big trouble because we're falling even further behind. So we're not going to get into. It's okay. We're not going to get into Surah Al-Hajj. We'll leave that for tomorrow. But I really want to close, if it's okay, with these 3 ayat at the end of Al-Anbiya here.
Okay.
So one is 104.
Okay.
This is a counterpart to that verse that talked about the Big Bang, like the
Mm.
heavens and the earth were joined and we split them. Now this is the big crunch. It's one of the theories. It's actually being dismissed right now. I think they're saying the universe is the expansion is accelerating, but for a time there was a theory that it's expanding and it's kind of in perfect balance, and it's possible that it will slow down and then fold up onto
Go back.
itself. And that's so. Look at this verse: the day that we roll up the heavens like a scroll, rolled up for
Yeah.
books. So it's coming back,
Mm.
completed. Even as we produce the first creation, so shall we produce a new one. A promise we have undertaken, truly shall we fulfill it. So just a mysterious allusion to, a kind of cyclical, heavens rolling up and then splitting asunder. It's a very interesting imagery here on creation. And then, given that we've talked about the Holy Land and the conflict in the Holy Land when we started, um, these are important verses. 105, we wrote in the Psalms, right? Before this, we wrote in the Psalms after the message given to Moses, my servants, the righteous shall inherit the earth. Innal arda yarithuha ibadiya salihun.
Mm.
And, this is a reminder to everybody, to the Jewish peoples, to the Muslims, to the Christians, be righteous. Don't transgress, even in conflict, and have faith in God. Um, and be like the better of the two sons of Adam, right?
Mm.
In this age of indiscriminate violence. And so we really need to take a step back. And I feel that that is, calling out to us here, that the earth will be inherited by my righteous servants.
Yeah.
And verily, in this Qur'an is a message for people who would truly worship God, the servants of God.
Yeah.
And then this beautiful verse.
Yeah.
Here's the verse. I cede it to you.
No. And we have sent you as nothing except as a mercy to all the worlds.
This is the prophet.
That's the prophet. We have sent you as nothing but a mercy to all the worlds, to everyone and to everything.
Yeah.
Wow.
Or we have only sent you as a mercy.
Yes, that's another way. Yeah.
Yeah. It can be read both ways.
Yes, yeah. But it
And
means
so,
that, yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
Now, we were just talking about mercy last night at John Carroll University in Cleveland. And, we've I don't know if we've talked enough about it here, but this idea that God has written, mercy upon God's self, so that our concept of divinity, meaning that nothing in this religion can happen, it cannot be understood properly without that hermeneutic key, as we've talked about, of mercy. But now the prophet himself, the entirety of his prophetic message is distilled in this one line, that we've only sent you as an embodiment of that same rahmah, that same mercy and love to everyone and to everything. Yeah, that's the essence. If someone were to ask me, like, what's your religion about? This is the line I would.
This is the line. And the first hadith that we're taught, al-musalsal bil-awwaliyah, ar-rahimuna yarhamuhumur rahman. So the ar-rahimun,
those who show mercy.
Those who show mercy, yarhamuhumur rahman, are shown mercy to by God.
Yeah.
Irhamu man fil ard. Have mercy on those upon the earth. Yarhamkum man fis sama. And the one who is in the heavens will have mercy upon you.
Ameen.
So may it be so. May it be so.
Yes. What a beautiful way to end this evening. Thank you, Mahan.
Thank you, Doctor. Good to be with you.
Good to be with you, and thank you all all of you who are joining either in real time or in unreal time. We are grateful to be celebrating the Qur'an and giving the Qur'an its due on these blessed nights of Ramadan with you. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay.
Subhanak Allahumma wa bihamdik nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. The glory be to you and all praise. We testify that there is no God except for you. We seek your forgiveness and turn to you in repentance.
Ameen. Beautiful. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi.